"Who are you and what are you doing on my bed?" Emmanuel said, "I'm your wife, baby." Lucy tried to explain, "Shut up, and don't you baby me." "You're not my wife," Emmanuel shouted. This is how it all began. Long time ago, in a village somewhere in Lagos, lives a family known as Mazi Okafor, which consists of the man, his wife, and children. And Lucy happened to be one of his daughter, though her parent died leaving her with her stepmother. Lucy was kind, hardworking, and always helped her neighbors. But Lucy had one problem. Her stepmother, Oluchi, was very cruel. She made Lucy do all the work around the house, while her own children did nothing. Lucy never complained. She worked quietly, hoping one day her life would change. One day, a man came to the village. He was tall, with a rough beard, and he wore old clothes. His name was Emmanuel. He walked to Lucy's house and asked to speak to her stepmother. "I hear there's a beautiful girl in this village. I want to marry her," Emmanuel said. Mrs. Bello looked at him with a smile. She thought he was poor and didn't have much to offer. But Lucy was very kind to him. She smiled at Emmanuel and said, "I'm sorry, I'm just an orphan. I don't have much." Emmanuel didn't mind. He asked if he could visit again to speak more with Lucy. Every time he came, he spoke kindly to her, and they became friends. Oluchi watched from the window and didn't like how Emmanuel treated Lucy with respect. But that wasn't her business, since he was so poor and wasn't good for her daughters. Then, one day, a surprising thing happened. Oluchi heard from a neighbor that Emmanuel wasn't poor at all. He was in fact a rich man who had hidden his wealth from everyone. He was looking for a good heart, not just money. Oluchi's eyes opened wide with greed. She wanted her own daughter Jennifer to marry Emmanuel and get all his money. So, she began to tell lies to Emmanuel about Lucy, saying that Lucy wasn't a good girl and that Jennifer would be a better wife. But Emmanuel wasn't fooled. He had seen how kind and honest Lucy was. He knew she was the one he wanted to marry. One afternoon, he took Lucy aside. "Lucy," he said, "I have something important to tell you. I am not poor. I am a rich man, but I want a wife who loves me for who I am, not for my money. I've seen your kindness, and that is what matters most to me." Lucy's heart filled with joy. She had never expected this, but she was happy to know that Emmanuel truly cared for her, and she is going to live this life of suffering. She smiled and said, "I may not have much, but I will always treat you with love and kindness." Soon after, Emmanuel asked Lucy to marry him, and she said yes with all her heart. When Oluchi heard the news, she was very angry. But it was too late. Lucy and Emmanuel were married in a beautiful ceremony. They moved to a big, lovely house far away from the village. Oluchi and her children stayed behind, with nothing but their greed and wickedness. 6 months later, Oluchi and her children came visiting, although Lucy was not happy about their visits because of the way they all treated her, and she knew how evil they could be. Mr. and Mrs. Emmanuel always have visitors who come to visit them, and this Sunday wasn't anything different, as they had lots of visitors. The visitors left late at night. Jennifer and Joy helped to clean up. Oluchi also came and helped to clean up. Emeka was happy about this new change. Change is the only thing that's constant in life. "I'm convinced they've learned their lessons," he said to himself before going to bed. Oluchi came to Emmanuel and asked if she could have a word with him. "Go ahead. What is the matter?" he asked. "No, there's no problemo. I just want to appreciate you for everything. for all the gifts, despite being aware of how cruel I and my children have been to your wife. Still, you allowed us to stay in your house and gave us lots of gifts, more than you give anyone else. Emmanuel, you're such a good man. And I also want to plead with you. We'll love to stay for 2 weeks if you don't mind. I know everything you did to my wife in the past. You see, I went to Yaba to look for a wife. When I met Lucy, I knew she was the one. When I made inquiry and discovered your attitude towards her, I decided to act as a poor man so you'll accept my proposal. Who am I not to forgive you? If not for what you did, I wouldn't have been able to marry her. Staying for 2 weeks is not an issue at all. There's enough food and drink. The house is big enough for you and your children. Feel free. Oluchi was so excited because her plans were coming to play. Emmanuel went to his bedroom and narrated everything they had discussed to his wife Lucy. You did what? You let them stay for 2 weeks without first discussing with me? Did you know what they are capable of? I was just waiting for the dawn of the day so they will leave, yet you gave them another 2 weeks after staying for 2 days? And you didn't discuss it with me first. This is not good at all, Lucy said angrily. My love, I understand how you feel, but they are your family. I couldn't just bring myself to say no to her. Emmanuel said, trying to calm his wife. Then you should have at least discussed with me first before making that decision. Lucy said, I'm so sorry, my love. I take all the blame. Just calm down. Emmanuel said, it's just 2 weeks and everything will be all right. I don't want to hear any more stories. 2 weeks and that's it, Lucy said with a strong tone. Oluchi and her children started their plot that night. Oluchi called her evil friend Teresa, who's just like her. They were on the phone all night making plans on how to strike. Oluchi told Teresa to dress properly and come to Lucy's house with the intent of visiting Oluchi. She should come with everything they needed to carry out their plans successfully. The next day, Teresa went to a very renowned herbalist called Babasi Finish, who made some charms for her and gave her a calabash to give to Oluchi. On the 3rd day of the festival, Teresa arrived at the mansion. Oluchi was so excited to see her. Teresa was also a widow like Oluchi, who had 2 grown-up daughters, who left her because of her evil attitude towards others. They work and live in the city, but never visited their mother, but sent her monthly allowance. Oluchi, Teresa, and Oluchi's 2 daughters continued in their pretense. With the presence of Teresa, they became even more successful in their plan, as Teresa brought everything Oluchi needed to execute her plans. They kept doing all the house chores after each day and preparing for the next day where they are going to carry out their motives. They literally turned themselves into maids, trying to win Emmanuel's trust and to make him believe that they truly changed. They felt if they could get Emmanuel on their side, Lucy was a walkover, and they successfully did this with all their pretense. Emmanuel was a very free-spirited person who believes anyone can change for the better. He believed in second chance more than anyone else. On the 7th, Oluchi decided to carry out her grand plan. She decided to serve Emmanuel and Lucy by herself. She told the maid not to bother taking the food to them, that she was going to do it herself. She added the portion Teresa brought and took it to Emmanuel and Lucy. Lucy didn't like the fact that Oluchi served them, but Emmanuel told her to let go, that Oluchi is her mother, she should forgive her and let go. Oluchi tasted the food before them just to prove to them that it was in a good condition. Since the portion was specially made with Emmanuel's name, it couldn't affect anyone else. And since it wasn't a portion to kill, she had nothing to lose, so she tasted it. You see, there's nothing. If there was something inside, she wouldn't have tasted it. Would she kill her own self? Just let it go. They've truly changed, Emmanuel said. Oluchi walked out, and Emmanuel and Lucy ate the food. Teresa, Oluchi, her friend, and her 2 daughters stayed up late just to clean up and wait to see if their plan is going to work, even though they all trusted Babasi's finished charm. Just when Lucy was beginning to feel that it might be that they've truly changed, Oluchi's plot manifested. Emmanuel and Lucy went to bed happy, only to wake up as strangers. Emmanuel screamed as he woke up seeing Lucy. "What is going on here? Why am I on this bed? Who are you and what are you doing on my bed?" Emmanuel said, "I'm your wife, baby." Lucy tried to explain. "Shut up! And don't you baby me. You're not my wife," Emmanuel shouted. His voice was so loud that Oluchi and her daughters ran to the room. As soon as he saw Jennifer, he said, "Where have you been? And why did you allow a total stranger to sleep on our matrimonial bed?" "Yes, this is my wife," he said, hugging Jennifer so tight. But Lucy tried to explain to him, but he wouldn't listen. "Leave my house at once, you wicked impersonator." Oluchi and Joy helped to push her out. She ran to some of his relatives and explained what had happened. But there was nothing they could do. They knew it wasn't ordinary, but Oluchi had used a very strong charm, since that is what she is known for. They pleaded with her to stay with them in the meantime until they figured out how to bring him back to his senses. Lucy was 3 months pregnant when she was thrown out of the house. One day, a message came from the village that her grandfather had passed away. So she decided to go stay with her grandmother in the village. Months turned to a year, and Lucy delivered a bouncing baby boy. Since her grandmother was old and could no longer walk, Lucy had to work on people's farmlands and sell some petty stuff in order to feed herself, her son, and her grandmother. Nobody knew she was married to a billionaire. Her grandmother regretted ever allowing her son to marry Oluchi, which later turned out to be Lucy's stepmother. Every day came with the guilt that she made her go through all the suffering and troubles. If you had allowed your father to remain single after the death of your mother, there wouldn't have been any need for Oluchi, and you probably wouldn't have been suffering like this. She kept crying and blaming herself for everything. Now the plenty grandchildren I wanted are useless. I still just have one granddaughter. It's all my fault her grandmother kept crying and lamenting. "Big Mama, it's okay. I understand how you feel." Lucy said, "One thing is for certain. God will fight for you, my child. Help will come from unexpected places. The spirit of your father and your mother will also fight for you." Mama Chidi prayed. The day of her grandfather's burial came. Oluchi and her daughters, with Emmanuel, came as well. As soon as Lucy saw her husband, she ran to him. "You again? What are you doing here? Why are you everywhere? I am not your husband." "I do not know you," he said. "Look at your son. I named him Emmanuel Jr.," she said, pointing at her son. But he drove her out of his sight. She kept crying all through. When Joy saw how Lucy had been suffering and how terrible she looked, and the son looking at her old grandmother too, she felt compassion and regretted everything they had done to her. She went to a quiet place and cried, remembering how wickedly they've treated her. Growing up, Lucy's mom never treated us bad. She guided us in the right path. She loved me. Lucy was always a big sister to me. Where did I get it wrong? My mom taught us to hate an innocent woman, even in her death. Maltreated her daughter in her own father's house. Married off her daughter to a man without asking about his family because he was poor. She kept crying bitterly. Will Lucy ever forgive me? How will she trust me? I was her favorite little sister. We were sent out of her husband's home. My mom didn't scold us. My mom is the real devil here. She kept crying. She was sad all through the burial. When they got back to Emmanuel's house, her attitude changed. She told her mom that she would no longer be a part of their evil plan. But her mom threatened to kill her if she ever said a word. So she ran back to the village to stay with Lucy. As soon as Lucy saw her, she carried a knife and threatened to kill her and kill herself. Joy pleaded with her to hear her out. She explained everything her mom and Teresa had done. She cried and begged Lucy to forgive her and also promised to help her. She told her the only way is to break the calabash. I'll go back and pretend to have come back to my senses and that I'm with them so I can get access to the calabash. If you do this, then I'll believe you've truly changed, Lucy said. So she went back and pretended as if she was still with them. Her mother was happy that she was back with them. Little did she know that Joy had a plan. The next day, while Oluchi and Teresa, who had come to visit her, were discussing in the sitting room, Emmanuel and Jennifer were sleeping. Joy brought out the calabash and told her mom that it was over. Enough of all this evil, mom. Change. I'm going to break this calabash and set Emmanuel free from your bondage. Jennifer is not happy in this marriage which she told you. Still, you want the money. This is not marriage but deception, and I'm going to end everything right now. If you had treated Lucy well, you would have enjoyed everything because she would have taken you like a mother. Please, my child, don't break it. Please, I beg you. But Joy lifted it up and smashed it on the ground. Yeah, this girl has killed me. The noise from the scene woke Emmanuel and Jennifer up. As soon as he saw her, he recognized her. What are you doing on my bed, Jennifer? Get out of my bed. Where is Lucy? He went out and met Oluchi crying. What is going on here? Where is my wife? He asked. Since no one was saying anything, he decided to lock the door until they provide his wife. No one comes in and no one goes out. Joy took him inside and narrated everything that had happened and told him it's been 1 year he has been in bondage. When he heard about his son, he was so excited. For 1 year, my wife has been living like a beggar. You people are honestly devil in human form. You and your sister, your mom and Teresa will pay for this. No problem. I deserve any punishments. At least it will be recorded for me that I did one good thing before I died. I'm ready to pay for all my sins. My life has been ruined. I want to do one good thing before I die, she said, crying. She was really remorseful. When Emmanuel heard her, he felt pity, and he knew in his heart that it was a genuine change. I'll give you one more chance and spare you because you helped me. Without your help, I would have still been in that bondage. Meanwhile, Joy tried to convince Jennifer that they were on the wrong side and needed to turn a new leaf. But she wouldn't listen. Mom is using us for her selfish interest. She doesn't really care about us. James and John were pushed to robbery because of Mom, and she doesn't even care. She abandoned them there. I have been the only one going to visit them. Can't you still get it? But Jennifer refused to listen to her sister. Because she had Emmanuel at her disposal, he did whatever she wanted. Joy agreed to take Emmanuel to the village, where her grandmother's and Lucy stays, just like she promised. After discussing with Joy, Emmanuel arrested Jennifer, Teresa, and Oluchi. As Joy directed him, he drove straight to the village. He wept profusely when he saw his wife. The condition he saw her made him remember how she suffered in the hands of Oluchi. Seeing her in that same condition broke his heart greatly. He hugged his wife, carried his son, Emmanuel Jr., and wept profusely. Oluchi, Jennifer, and Teresa were released from prison and taken to her husband's kinsmen, who, after judgment, sent her to the king, and the final judgment was passed. Oluch, Jennifer, Teresa, and Baba C. Finish, who gave them the potion, was banished from the village. Oluchi, who was married from another village, was also banished from her own village, as the matter was taken to her own village too. She and her daughter, including Teresa, were also banished from the village, never to set their feet in the village or their festival ever again. They became wanderers wherever they went. They were driven away after a few months. Emmanuel took his wife and son back with him. Her grandmother and Joy also stayed with them. Joy never went back to her past life, but became a better person. Her grandmother lived with them until the day of her death. She realized that the number of children didn't really matter. She understood that just one child can become more than 1,000 children. Emmanuel later helped to bring out James and John from the prison. By the time they came out, they had already learned their lessons. They also stayed with Emmanuel. They pleaded that they wanted to learn skills. James became the best fashion designer in Lagos. He made all Emmanuel's outfits. People from far and wide came to patronize him. John, who loved school, later graduated and became a doctor. Joy was later married to Emmanuel's business partner, a very wealthy and kind man. They loved and respected Emmanuel and Lucy, and they took them as family and were never disrespectful to them in any way at all. Grandma died at a very good old age, and she was taken back to her village for burial. She was buried beside her husband. Lucy later had 3 more kids. They lived in peace and harmony. The moral of the story is that no matter how long you succeed in evil, as long as you don't change, there will be a day of reckoning, a day when you will pay for every evil you've done. Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can keep enjoying more captivating stories like this one.